Hello everyone and welcome back to another kind of world building video for the Explorer's Guide to Ravion. This time we're going to look at the Lochlend Magocracy, another territory within the Remont Empire. The Lochlend Magocracy lies to the westernmost end of the Horsehead Peninsula, a large region of lush jungle cliffs and valleys with many rushing waterways and crisscrossing parts of the region. For the most part, this region is less kind of tropical jungle and more temperate jungle. It's kind of this temperate rainforest, which is a little bit more something closer, if you could, to northern kind of California, Washington, or kind of this northern-ish kind of Minnesota area. Temperate rainforest is kind of has this relatively green kind of area to it. And so for the northernmost parts of the region is kind of more of a redwood, spruce wood kind of a territory. And then as you get further and further south, it becomes a little bit closer to what would be a tropical rainforest, as you would see in the picture. So I feel I should actually make that delineation clear. The primary mineral composition is slate and basalt, kind of as a conglomerate with small collective pockets of marble and even rarer veins of a mineral known as somnite. It's a rock formation with minor latent energy that can be drawn on to support enchantment efforts, or be crafted into powerful magical items. Basically, the Lochlend Magocracy gravitated towards more powerful materials and minerals that allowed them to become more powerful and controlled as a magical force, which is kind of a more interesting factor within their development. The Lochlend Magocracy, in and of itself, does tend to be kind of the land of wizards, right? It's at this point within the campaign, the place where the Filaria Academy is, and the Filaria Academy is the magical academy that is the most kind of respected and powerful magical academy for studying this kind of magical arts within the Remont Empire. And there aren't too many different academies across the world at all. So the Filaria Academy does sit kind of more prominently on the Remont Empire stage, but is also recognized on the world stage. So it's kind of a important region if you want to be able to put a lot of magical things in it. So I ended up doing that, and this is kind of how I have it set up so far. So the ecosystem of the Lochlend Magocracy, though, is that of kind of a rainforest with temperature and variation for the north and south latitudes. With the northernmost latitudes, normally kind of humid jungle grows colder and becomes more of this temperate rainforest, like I was saying, before eventually giving way to this permanently frozen forest at the very edges of the Remont Empire itself. It's this relative center of the region that's more tropical, and then even further south, we actually leave behind the tropical part of the rainforest to become kind of a petrified jungle, and ends up being kind of this rocky floodplain with sparse trees, and it doesn't necessarily seem to be as vibrant. It's still very pretty, and as the picture that you could see that I have here would suggest, it is still like a very nice landscape, and isn't necessarily harsh or inhospitable by any means, but it is kind of a rough landscape in and of itself compared to the rest. So there is one part of this region that is a massive crater to the very far south. It's this challenging landscape for travel and is otherwise uninhabited. This is the one part of this southernmost part of the region that is kind of a dangerous and even more inhospitable place. It's this massive crater that is has this influx of tidal water, and it has this influx of gemstones and everything from this crater that have developed, in rushing water from the sea drains into this kind of gemstone crater, is how I have it developed. Is there's this massive crater full of gemstones, like you were to crack a geode in half and set it down into the landscape. And it's all this extremely jagged gemstone area that makes travel difficult, the influx of tidal water every now and then, as well as the fact that this crater in and of itself is like extremely geoactive. So water does get into and drains within the gemstones in and of themselves and into this crater, and slowly down into pockets within these various gemstones, where it then sits and heats up before blasting back out as geysers. And it sends different parts of these kind of more jagged, broken crystals all into the air around. And it's basically this giant shrapnel field that happens, once every 12 hours. It gets inundated again, and somewhere between that inundation and then subsequent drying out and blasting water out is when it kind of becomes this extremely dangerous area on top of difficult to travel. So that people don't really go in there unless they're going to try to do it specifically on purpose for research purposes. So on the map, in general, the Lochlend Magocracy is right here in this kind of dark brown and red region. These kind of regions here, to the north towards this area towards Silver Breach, does have the more temperate kind of region, and as you get further south kind of towards Silverden and all of the regions otherwise in here, you have your kind of tropical jungle. And then down here near Drygrass, just south of it, and actually where you see this water here, that's the crater in and of itself. So you can see the crater very largely on the map itself. Between the Lochlend Magocracy and the Remont Empire as a nation, and to the south, where you would be able to see the Doke Kingdom developing. It's kind of the enforcement of the no man's land, so to speak, is nobody crosses the crater because of how dangerous it is. You're probably not going to survive the journey, so why mess? There is this, spit of land that you can try to cross, and there's, for the most part, plenty of space to be able to cross away from the geyser, but it's still a very dangerous area, given crystal growth and everything along those lines. The crater in and of itself does extend into this region, and it's also still a very geoactive and harsh region, so it makes it kind of a terrifying place to try to traverse. But otherwise, then the Lochlend Magocracy is this vibrant and lush territory. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about, once you do get past that dangerous part, what might be around, other than creatures within the jungle. Speaking of creatures within the jungle, there are some very significant cultures to kind of talk about when we talk about the Lochlend Magocracy. The Varand is this culture of arboreal Gelkin, that they live in the trees and the cliff faces of the Lochlend region's kind of humid jungle. This culture is concerned mainly with understanding the natural world and cultivating a connection to the forest around them, going on extensive kind of spiritual journeys to seek enlightenment. Gelkin in and of themselves are a homebrew race that I developed, and we'll do a video on at some point soon, but basically they're little gecko people. Lizard folk are these larger brutes, kind of closer to an iguana, right? And so I wanted to be able to supply my characters with NPCs and character options that are a little bit more akin to like a chameleon or a gecko or another smaller lizard. So I developed the Gelkin race so that they're small lizards that have focused on developing their mind a little bit more. They understand a little bit more than general lizard folk would. They have an intelligence boost, and they have kind of this proficiency towards nature, but also a little bit of arcana to try to understand nature a little bit better. So the Varand in and of themselves are these arboreal Gelkins, which you would recognize as kind of closer to chameleons in and of themselves. Very good at climbing, very good at kind of thriving out in the jungle or more vertical landscapes, to the point where they tend to thrive within this kind of tropical region. And so these people are a tribal culture that lives out in this kind of dense jungle, and goes on spiritual journeys and research and vision quests, and then use those with their mind to kind of try to understand things a little bit better. They're still kind of a young race, in terms of development, where they haven't necessarily sat down into book studies versus trying to understand things as the outdoor kid. If I taste dirt 20 million times, I can tell you what's in the dirt, kind of a perspective. So they want to know those things. The Serias are this culture of Wanti refugees that fled from the Wanti clans in the Doke Kingdom. Uh, they're relatively peaceful. It's actually kind of nice. It's one of the few different times that you'll see Yuan-Ti be kind of a peaceful culture versus as they typically get portrayed within various D&D kind of games and sessions and everything. They lend themselves much more to being monsters, and so a lot of these Yuan-Ti purebloods that have left the more kind of more abomination-esque sect group that are, you know, leaning more and more towards snakes, have looked at their kind of wave of life and decided to leave it and become this own culture in and of themselves. Since they have more of this humanity within them, they're more willing to leave, to get away from this stigma and this culture, to build their own. And so they understand that they're probably still going to be outcast from society, so they live on the fringes, and they're this tribal communal setting that they live off the land and develop their cultures in accordance with their own beliefs, not the beliefs of some cold-hearted serpent god. They they believe for the most part that people are deserving of being themselves, and any attempts to stop someone from being themselves is an infringement on that person's agency. And so forcefully sacrificing or transforming themselves into different things is not necessarily the most positive viewpoint that they might have. They might see the various struggles of different people and be frustrated by the relative lack of freedom, so to speak. Kind of coming from this history of them being uh, almost outcasts on the edge of a society that pursues being serpentine at all costs and being the least serpentine of the group, and eventually wanting to split off because of their low status within this culture. That's kind of it though for the Lochlend Magocracy. It's a pretty quick video. It is an interesting kind of a region. Like I said, the Falaria Academy is here. There's also that giant gemstone crater. It's got a numerous amount of crystals within it. Uh, but for the most part, it's kind of the great magic part of the world that supplies quite a bit of the rest of the empire with different aspects of magical power, and practitioners and various people leave from the school in Moonshade to pursue their own efforts as magic shops or other practitioners or experts for magic across the region or across the nations as a whole. So that will be all for the video so far. Thank you for sticking in tune for this long. Remember, it doesn't take much to make a difference out there, so be the difference that you want to see in the world. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.